Hey guys, this is Coach Edwards here with LacrosseGoalieTips.com and LacrosseGoalieUniversity.com. Listen, by the time you see this, I may have closed private coaching membership for this season. But if that's the case, then you come on over to LacrosseGoalieUniversity.com and join our group coaching there. Anyway, I'm moving on here. A couple things I want to tell you about. We've got a Facebook group. So creating the lacrosse goalie of the future is my new Facebook group for 2019. And it's been great because every Wednesday at 3:30 Eastern, I do a Facebook Live where I go deep onto a topic and we'll talk for about a half hour, 45 minutes on a topic. And you're more than welcome to send your questions in there. So head on over to the Lacrosse Goalie of the Future Facebook group, and I will see you in there. But for this week, one of the questions that actually came from one of our new members, Tony, is this question. So I asked all our new members in that Facebook group, what's your number one question when it comes to lacrosse goaltending? And Tony's question was goalie basics and fundamental teaching for U12 and U8. So Tony, my topic, or my name for this topic, is basically 4 tips for young lacrosse goalies. And it really doesn't matter if it's U5, U8, U12, U14, or if it's new kids that start kind of in high school. My tips are the same. All right. So because what you're going to learn from me is fundamentals never change. Tactics might, tips might. In the world of lacrosse goaltending, that really hasn't happened too much, but the fundamentals never change. So here's what I want to leave you with for today. So tip number 1 for new lacrosse or young lacrosse goalies is focus on physical ability, okay? If you watch my video on 3 keys to making any save, we have to see the ball, we have to know where it's going, and then we have to move in front of the ball. And the move in front of the ball part is the one that takes the most time, it's the most complicated, and it's the one that also involves the most fear. Because when we're and this kind of ties into tip number 4 here in a minute, one of the things that we need to worry about with our new goalies is confidence. And so one of the things that it's never failed me, when I have a big, strong kid in the net, male or female, there is a confidence over the ball that they have. Whereas if they're kind of small and weak and you feel like if a ball came hard enough, it would go through them like a wet paper bag. Physical ability is everything. I have parents whose athletes I coach in a variety of sports. Doesn't matter if it's lacrosse or over at Athlete Specific, where I run my Athlete Breakthrough Blueprint program. I deal with athletes in other sports, and it never fails. I'll have an athlete who is, parents are like, well, what kind of drills should we be working on, and what skills does he need to learn? I'm like, the kid needs to learn how to do a push-up, right? So because we can talk all day about sticks and equipment and new gear and depth of pocket, but if that kid is like super weak, or tight and weak, or like just inflexible, you're gonna have issues, right? So instead of like with what I say is, like, most athletes on the field and in the cage are like they're carrying a 50-pound backpack, right? And so we can teach them all the stuff we want, but if they're lugging around that 50-pound backpack, they're not going to be very efficient. Whereas if we get them physically better and more flexible and more mobile, and they're working on some movement prep, and so they come into the game, so every day they're getting stronger, you're building a foundation to build on. Whereas a lot of athletes, if they just focus on the technical stuff, if they're just in the cage all the time taking shots, they're playing the same song on the record, and we really want to beef up that record. Okay, we get better sound. All right, so that's tip number 1, is work on physical ability. Tip number 2 for young goalies is to work on stick skills. And I'm not talking about a goalie stick. I'm talking about stick skills in general. Because with young and new goalies, there's again, physical ability. There's a weakness. Typically, they're weak in their hands. They're weak in their upper body. And they're weak, like, wielding the goalie stick. So if we can give them a short stick and a tennis ball and a wall, right, they can be working on tennis ball work and stick skills and wall ball and all that sort of stuff. Because I've seen this over and over and over again where a kid, and I get emails every year from kids who go like, hey, I was a midi last year and our goalie like switched schools and coach asked me to be a goalie and I'm doing all right with a stick, but so the first thing is always like, hey, I'm okay with a stick. I know for a fact that goalies that are good with their stick are good goalies. They have really good potential to be good goalies. So you take your best kid, your best stick wielding kid, throw them in the cage, and odds are they're going to be pretty good. Why? They have confidence over the ball, right? They have mastery. They have stick mastery. So after physical ability, I want you to be focusing on stick skills for your goalies. Do the 100 fake challenge. All right, the 100. I'll do a video separate for the 100 fake challenge, but basically it's just 100 fakes. It's 100 fakes with the stick, right? Like they're going to make a pass, they're going to flip the stick over, and they're going to pull it back. That's a fake. Have them do 100 fakes a day. Those kids are going to get strong in a heartbeat, okay? Tip number 3 for young lacrosse goalies is confidence, and that usually means protection, okay? So I always hate hearing about goalies who get basically rushed out of the position because coaches took advantage of them physically. And I'm not saying in an abusive way, but just, a lot of kids quit the goaltending position because they're not wearing enough gear. They got peppered in practice, or they get peppered every practice, and coaches are insensitive kind of to that needs. I saw, and this, I had to bite my tongue so hard. I was in a Facebook group that's not mine, and somebody posted like a question about shin guards for goalies. The thread that followed made me sick to my stomach because it was full of just insensitive coaches who were just like trying to be tough guys saying goalies need to suck it up. You know what? That doesn't work. A goalie is either going to quit or be horrible because he's fearful of the ball. We want to be progressing our goalies. We want to be progressing athletes in general. It doesn't matter what the sport, right? In tennis, in Europe, this started in Europe, they use smaller courts and different balls. So there's, you might not know this, but there's the yellow tennis ball that we all know and love, but there's actually a green ball and there's also a red ball. And maybe I'll shoot a video about this at some point. But why? Because kids that play tennis are also afraid of the ball. So what do? They make the ball simpler. They make it easier for the kids to understand. Why? Because it allows them to develop, right? And we want our lacrosse goalies to develop. And they'll do that if they stay in the sport and they don't lose their confidence, right? Because we don't want them to quit, all right? Because as they get better physically and they get more mastery over their stick and over their ball, the confidence goes up, and then we have the opportunity to develop them. Otherwise, they're gone and you're looking for another goalie, all right? So how do we do that? Protection, pad them up, make sure you're using tennis balls where you need to, back up the shooters, give the goalie time to react to the ball, especially if they're young and new, and that's huge. So tip number 4, and it's the last tip, is then become goalie specific. So at ages like U8, U10, U12, I'm not a fan of goalie specificity, just because, I find there's kids that either really like playing the goalie position and then they get a little lazy because athletically they're not really developing. They're just kind of standing a lot, obviously, which is the position. And we want our goalies ultimately long-term to be athletic and explosive. You're not going to do that standing in the cage all the time. All right, so I want to see kids out playing, not just lacrosse, but other sports, but then they're playing midi, they're playing long pole, they're playing attack, they're working on those stick skills. And then put them in the game for a half or a quarter or whatever, or for practice, and then have them play out, whatever. But make sure those goalies are out and about because you want them to develop their athletic ability. And once that's all said and done, then you can get goalie specific with them, okay? That's really, really important. In North America, obviously where lacrosse is king, people are starting to play goalie like in 3rd grade, and I'm just like, it's okay. And sometimes a kid just wants to be a goalie, and that's so cool, but you have to be aware that we have to develop them physically. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that they're going to be a goalie that develops physically, and what's going to happen is they're going to get passed over a kid who comes in and they're physically ready to play, and then they're going to learn a lot quicker, and then they're going to be better. And so that ends up frustrating a young kid who's been playing lacrosse for so long because he thinks, well, I've been goalie since I was 3 or in grade 3, and I should be the goalie. But really, athletically, the kid's a dud because he's just been standing in the crease for so many years. Okay, so Tony, great question here. Again, I go in more detail on this for our Lacrosse Goalie University members. If you're not a member, though, of our Facebook group, join. I'll put a link below. But head on over to the Creating the Lacrosse Goalie of the Future, because one of the things that I am super passionate about is I take what I know from other sports and looking to advance the lacrosse goalie position. Some of these things I've been talking about for 25 years. All right, I can't believe I can say that now. I'm that old. But since I graduated high school, I realized things about the goalie position, started teaching it then, and things are finally coming around. But still, it's really freaking slow, and it's driving me crazy, okay? So take care of your young goalies, right? Work on their physical ability. Help them master their stick skills. Keep their confidence high, protect them in the cage, both with gear and with the distance of the ball, and then get goalie specific. All right, I'll see you next week, all right, with our blog post at lacrossegoalietips.com. I'm going to start maybe moving those around in our Facebook group, Facebook Lives every Wednesday at 3:30. And then if you haven't already, if you know an athlete, maybe they're not a lacrosse goalie, but they work in other sports or they play other sports, and they deal with negative thoughts, right? Most everybody knows an athlete who struggles with negative thoughts. Well, at athletespecific.com, if you go to athletespecific.com/ANT-download, ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts. They're the thoughts that creep in your head basically when you're not even really worried too much. They're just they're subconscious, they pop in, but then goalies they eat away at goalies' confidence and their self-esteem and things like that. So I put together a download over there, a free PDF guide for athletes on how to master their automatic negative thoughts. So head on over to athletespecific.com/ANT-download and pick up yourself a copy. All right, cheers everyone. See you next week. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube or on our website, do me a favor and like the video, share it, subscribe it if you would. And also, if you're on iTunes, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I put original content on iTunes. I do extra podcasts and things like that that you won't just see on the YouTube channel or on the blog. So be sure you subscribe over there. And listen, every week I put out new content as well as in our private Facebook group at Creating the Lacrosse Goalie of the Future. All the links to all the resources I talked about today will be in the show notes below. So if you're on your phone on iTunes, you'll be able to link to them there, as well as if you're on the blog or on YouTube, you'll see them there as well. If you got a question for me, feel free to email me, coachedwards@lacrossegoalietips.com, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.